reportedly have interest in Justin Verlander. But would that move even be worth it? We'll talk about that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, January 19th, 2026, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about the recent news from the weekend that the Orioles have had some interest in free agent starting pitcher Justin Verlander. Could the future Hall of Famer come and pitch in Baltimore? We'll talk about what he looked like in San Francisco last year, why he could help the O's, but why at this point it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Then we'll chat a little bit about the Reds being willing to deal from their rotation if the Orioles could find a trade there to better theirs. And finally, we'll just take a little look at the Orioles offseason so far and where they stand projection-wise at each position on the diamond. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So I want to start with the news we got from, I believe, a Ken Rosenthal story in The Athletic on Friday night. He talked about a couple of different things, and we'll talk about two of them here today. But the one that pertains to the Orioles the most is that Rosenthal reported that the Orioles have shown some interest in free agent starting pitcher Justin Verlander. Now, to be clear from the jump here, Ken immediately reported, like in the next sentence in that story in The Athletic, that the Orioles are still looking for one more upgrade in their starting rotation and that they prefer that upgrade to be someone who sits in the top of their rotation. Justin Verlander is not the pitcher he was even 3-4 years ago at this point. Justin Verlander is not someone you sign right now to put in the top 3 of your rotation. Justin Verlander is someone who helps you as a number 4 or a number 5 right at the end of your career. So the way Rosenthal reported was like, hey, the Orioles want to make an upgrade. They want to go better than Verlander, but they've at least had those conversations and shown some interest. Let's just kind of set the tone there for what we're going to talk about. So I had Justin Verlander, number 5 among my wish list of mid-rotation free agent starters who were available this offseason. I did the top 5. Those were like the top guys. Then I had another list of 10 of the mid-rotation guys. Verlander sat at number 5 on that list. Actually, Zach Eflin, who the Orioles signed to a 1-year, $10 million deal, he was number 6 on that list for me, right behind Verlander. So, if you back this up a couple of weeks before the Orioles had signed Zach Eflin, I'd be totally down for bringing in Justin Verlander on a 1-year deal to be the guy that basically the Orioles signed Zach Eflin to be the, depth as your 4 or 5 starter, guy who's going to give you some innings. You can't count on him for 180 innings this year because of either age or injury, but you feel like if he gives you 130 of some good pitching, he's really going to help you get to the postseason, and then you still go after that top guy. The weird part of the timing here is the Orioles already signed Eflin, of course, already traded for Shane Baz this offseason. They have a full rotation. If they're going to make another upgrade, which I think they should, it's got to be someone who fits into the number 1, 2, or 3 slots. And Justin Verlander at this point in his career, despite the fact that he's going to the Hall of Fame, just does not fit there. And as I've said multiple times, as other pitchers go off the board, on my mid-rotation starter list, anyone below Zach Gallen, who I had at number 3 on that list, at this point in the offseason with Baz and Eflin already in the fold, is just not worth it for the Orioles to add. I don't think gives them an upgrade. You already have Dean Kramer. You've signed Zach Eflin. It kind of feels like overkill at the back end of the rotation to add Justin Verlander. Now, there's no such thing as too much starting pitching depth, and if the Orioles did make a 1-year signing tomorrow for Justin Verlander, I'm not going to freak out like crazy. He would help the team, I think, win some games in 2026. It's just not the upgrade they should be looking for at this point. But again, if they had not signed Eflin, I think Verlander would have been a nice addition in that spot. Now, he is 42 years old, and he will be 43 in February, which means he's going to be 43 for the next season he pitches. Not a lot of 43-year-olds have big league success, right? The last three starting pitchers to throw at least 100 innings in a big league season at age 43 or older was Rich Hill in 2023. He had a 5.41 ERA. Bartolo Colon in 2018, he had a 5.78 ERA. And Bartolo Colon the year before in 2017 when he had a 6.48 ERA. Not a lot of success. The last good season from a 43-year-old was Bartolo Colon in 2016 when he had a 3.43 ERA in 33 starts that season. Now, the list of guys in big league history, at least since the modern-ish era, who have thrown at least 100 innings in a season at 43 years old or older, it's mostly Hall of Famers, right? And Justin Verlander is going to be a Hall of Famer. He can absolutely still be good at age 43. But to be fair, this is some of the same stuff I said about Charlie Morton. Now, Morton was about 2 years younger than Verlander, but was in his 40s. And what I said when the Orioles signed Morton to a one-year deal last offseason. Now, the Morton deal didn't end up being as bad as it looked early. He recovered, and the Orioles were actually able to trade him for a pitching prospect to Detroit at the deadline. But his first 6 weeks were a complete and utter disaster and helped kind of tank that Orioles 2025 season. Difference between Morton and Verlander is A, Verlander just has a better body of work than Charlie Morton, and B, Verlander is coming off a better previous season. Verlander in 2025 was succinctly better than Charlie Morton was in 2024, although he's like a year and a half older at time of the potential signing. I mean, Verlander was pretty quietly good for the San Francisco Giants in 2025. He signed a one-year deal over there. He had 29 starts. He threw 152 innings. He posted a 3.85 ERA with a 3.85 FIP, so there wasn't a lot of like good luck involved in that. It was just a really, really solid kind of middle to back end starter season. And he finished the season really, really strong in 75 innings after the All-Star break. He had a 2.99 ERA. Like, it looked kind of close to vintage Verlander, which included a 2.08 ERA in September for the 42-year-old. He was 11th in ERA in the second half among qualified starting pitchers in Major League Baseball at age 42. He's not the same pitcher, but he is still a special talent. Now, again, he's not the pitcher he used to be. He's not the Hall of Fame Justin Verlander, but who is approaching age 43? He still allowed a low hard hit rate last year. Didn't really have walk issues. Strikeouts were down, but still was getting a good amount of swing and miss overall. His fastball sat 93.9. We'll call it 94. That velo is actually up from 2024, so it's not like he's really, really steadily dropping in velocity, although he's dropped generally over time. And a 106 stuff plus was basically the exact same it's been for the past 3 years. So in terms of the raw stuff for Verlander into his 40s, no real big sharp fall off. And he's still tinkering. That's the other thing that makes you like Verlander is he pitched at his age 42 season for a new team last year, and he added a new pitch at age 42. He threw a sweeper for the first time ever, threw it about 8% of the time. Now, didn't have the greatest command, but he only allowed 3 hits off that sweeper all season in 152 innings. Now, there's been injury stuff coming up for Verlander basically since he got into his late 30s, and there's injury stuff for all pitchers. So when guys start approaching 40 and they're still pitching, you're going to expect them to spend at least one stint on the injured list every season if they're still going to give it a go. And he missed about a month from May to June with a pec injury and didn't pitch great before that injury. But when he came back, he really finished the season healthy and finished the season strong. And again, if the O's hadn't signed Zach Eflin already, I'd be totally fine with Justin Verlander on a 1-year, $15 million deal to kind of be your 5 starter for now, your 5-6 guy. You know, he gives you 140 innings. You hope he's solid like he was last year. He, gives you great leadership. He's a future Hall of Famer. He helps out the young pitchers in the clubhouse. He's a guy who is from Northern Virginia, so he's kind of from the area and grew up before the Nats were in town. So that was really Orioles area through and through. He has a relationship with Mike Elias because he was in Houston right at the end of the term that Elias was there before coming over to Baltimore. So this connection here would make sense. And again, even if they signed him at this point, well, they already have Eflin and Boz. It's not like I'm going to freak out like crazy, but I think it would be disappointing. Not the Verlander signing in a vacuum. He can still be helpful even at age 43. But the fact that if they sign Verlander now too, they're probably done adding starting pitching for the offseason. Like, there would just be no space to add a 4th starter along with potentially Boz, Eflin, and Verlander. You'd have some more solid innings covered. I think signing Verlander would make the Orioles better tomorrow than they are today. But probably by a marginal issue, right? For the 18th projected starting pitching rotation, maybe Verlander gets him to 17th or 16th, but doesn't make the jump that they really need. It would also give him the ability to play for every team that wears orange: Giants, Mets, Tigers, and Orioles. But I don't know. I don't think it's what they need right now. Like, I'm out pretty much on someone like Zach Gallen, but I think signing Gallen right now would help the Orioles more than signing Verlander. Like, I'd be more in on that signing just because of the huge age difference and probably the bigger upside at this point that Zach Gallen shows, despite the struggles that he's had recently. So hopefully, the way this Orioles front office operates, not a lot of the time do you hear the Orioles actually connected to a player in the media before they sign or trade for that player. Most of their moves under Mike Elias have come almost out of nowhere. Like, there was no Shane Baz Orioles connection until that trade happened, right? There was not a ton. There was a little bit of Pete Alonso Orioles before that happened, but the Baz trade kind of came out of nowhere, right? There was nothing connecting the Orioles to either Morton or Sugano last offseason, and then boom, the deal happens, right? There wasn't much connecting to like Tyler O'Neill, and then boom, the deal happened. So hopefully the way stuff leaks out of this front office, this means the Orioles did have strong interest in Verlander maybe back before they signed Eflin. They got the Eflin deal done instead, and just now it leaks out of the front office kind of once they've moved past thinking about Justin Verlander. That's also a possibility. Again, not going to freak out if they sign him, but it would certainly, I think, be a disappointment if that was the end of their starting pitching additions to be. Not that Justin Verlander wouldn't help the team, but just, I think, not what the Orioles are looking for right now. I think more of what they could be looking for could be, especially if they don't get Framber Valdez, the kind of last really good free agent starter that's out there, is to look on the trade market. And there are still intriguing names out there. That includes from the rotation of the Cincinnati Reds. We got more reporting from Ken Rosenthal over the weekend that the Reds do seem to be willing to deal from that rotation. So could the Orioles jump in on one of those guys? We'll talk about who could be available coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. We're heading into championship weekend, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Just open the profit boost pack first thing on game day coming up on Sunday and see what boosts you might want to apply. You make your picks, then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So as the Orioles more than likely still hunt for one more starting pitcher this offseason, the Reds had some guys who are available. And the O's could go the trade route, especially if they're not able to get Framber Valdez and they still want to upgrade their rotation. There are guys out there. The Orioles still have guys like Kobe Mayo that they could absolutely trade. And maybe Cincinnati, there was a little bit of rumblings very early in the offseason that the Reds would be willing to deal from their rotation depth to help their lineup. That quieted down a little bit. But then recently, Ken Rosenthal had a report in that same story about the Justin Verlander stuff over the weekend that teams are very actively calling the Cincinnati Reds right now in trade talks about their starters. And the understanding is the Reds are at least willing to listen and have those conversations at this point because they do have a good rotation. They are a team that went to the postseason in 2025, but they need to get better in the offense if they want to do that again. A good way to maybe do that is trade an arm for a bat. So who do the Reds have? First of all, they're not trading Hunter Green. It's just not happening. Hunter Green is a bona fide ace in this sport. He's young. He's signed a pretty cost-controlled contract extension through 2028. He just posted, a 2.76 ERA, even with his injuries last year. It's just not going to happen. But beyond Hunter Green, there are interesting guys. Let's start with Andrew Abbott, 26-year-old left-handed starter with 4 years of team control left. He has made 75 starts in the big leagues over the past 3 seasons for the Reds since debuting with a 3.42 ERA and had a career year in 2025, 2.87 ERA in 29 starts. There's a lot of Ranger Suarez in here. Throws a little harder. His fastball is kind of 92 to 93, but it's all predicated on hitting the corners, great command, and giving up soft contact. It's like a 22% K rate with a 6% walk rate. He's the kind of pitcher who's always going to have a FIP higher than his ERA, but is always going to outpitch his FIP anyway. I think the cost would be huge for someone like Abbott. 4 years of control. He's young, and it's likely he never pitches better than he did in 2025, meaning his cost in the trade is probably never going to be higher than it is right now. So maybe the Reds are willing to take offers, but I think it would just cost way, way too much to get somebody like Andrew Abbott. Someone who could be a little more cost-effective is Nick Lodolo. He's a 28-year-old left-handed pitcher with only 2 years of team control left. He made 28 starts and had a 3.33 ERA in 2025. He threw a career-high 156 and two-thirds innings, so he still is not like pitched out a full season in the big leagues. He's missed time with injury every year since he debuted in the bigs in 2022, but it's been mostly lower body and then some finger issues. There hasn't really been, shoulder, forearm, elbow stuff that's kept him out, which is a good sign. Doesn't mean it wouldn't happen in the future. He's got an awesome curveball. He throws it more than any other pitch. 2 good fastballs at 94, a great changeup. It's a 4-pitch mix. He's not an ace, and he's never pitched a full season, but I think he's gettable. And I certainly think if the Orioles ended this offseason by trading for Nick Lodolo, he'd, maybe fit in to the 3 above Shane Baz, maybe the 4 behind Shane Baz, but I think he would be a legitimate upgrade to this rotation wherever he fell in. Not your top of the rotation guy, maybe not the ceiling or output that someone like Framber Valdez has or Freddie Peralta has, but I think would be a worthwhile addition if the Orioles wanted to go that way. Another guy I've mentioned already this offseason is 29-year-old right-hander Brady Singer. He is a rental. He'll be a free agent after 2026. He's been healthy, made 32 starts in 2025, had a 4.03 ERA. He's made at least 29 starts in each of the past 3 seasons, so a really, really good run of health for Singer. First when he was in Kansas City, and then after being traded to the Reds. Stuff isn't very good. Neither is the underlying data, but he kind of posts, right? He's more of a Dean Kramer type guy where you can trust him to be out there. I just don't think Singer is better than any of the 5 Orioles starting pitchers right now. Like, I wouldn't take him over Dean Kramer or Zach Eflin, and you could make an argument you wouldn't take him over Tyler Wells. That would be more of a Singer. You can count on more innings, so maybe you would put Singer above Wells, but you're not going to trade for someone who may not even be one of your top 5 starting pitchers. That's just not something that's going to happen. He wouldn't be too expensive as a rental. I just think similar to the Justin Verlander thing, where it's like, would he help? Kind of, yes, in a way, but it's not really worth it to go and get that guy. The other one that intrigues me is Rhett Lauder. He's only 23, right-handed pitcher with 5 years of team control left. He came up and debuted and made 6 starts in 2024 and then missed essentially all of 2025. He had oblique, forearm, and shoulder issues throughout the season. Ended up getting healthy by the end of the year, and so the Reds had him pitch in the Arizona Fall League just to get some innings, and he seems to be healthy now. He still has prospect status, and he's still a kind of low top 100 prospect at some places. This would be more of an upside play than someone you can count on. So again, like, I don't know where you'd feel good slotting Rhett Lauder into your rotation right now if you traded for him. So again, is it worth it? This is more of a long-term move for the Orioles to make and could work out long-term, but he's someone that certainly could be available. Now, I can't really see the Reds trading Chase Petty or Chase Burns, young guys, just got to the bigs, huge upside and stuff. And the other guy in the mix is Brandon Williamson, who had Tommy John in September of 2024, so most likely is going to be ready for opening day. He wasn't that good when he pitched back then, and again, he hasn't pitched since September of 24, so that's not someone I'd really be in on. But if you're looking to make a deal with the Reds, again, this could match up for the Orioles. The Reds have a bad offense and a good rotation. The Orioles have a good offense and a questionable still rotation. Those are the kind of teams that should match up for these kind of deals. I think the Reds should be looking for bats, which is why they would be trading from this rotation surplus. Like, this Reds offense is bad, but they got to the postseason last year, and they're trying to win, and it needs to get better. Dylan Beavers, Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, etc. These guys would all help the Cincinnati Reds in 2026 and beyond. And a couple of these starters would help the Baltimore Orioles in 2026 and beyond. So maybe, just maybe, these two teams can make a deal. I think it is certainly a possibility here at this point in the schedule. But that is kind of where the Orioles sit, right? They're still looking around at again, in Ken Rosenthal's report over the weekend, they're still looking at the free agents, mentioned Gallen, mentioned Framber Valdez, mentioned Verlander. They're still looking at the trade market. They're open to doing both. He's Rosenthal's talked about how they are open to, losing the draft pick if they do sign a guy with a qualifying offer, which would be either Gallen or Valdez in free agency. They're still willing to trade away even after making the Boz trade. We're here in mid-January, and they're keeping their options open. Remember, they didn't make the Corbin Burns trade until early February 2 years ago, so there's still certainly time to make one more move to really solidify what this rotation looks like. So let's kind of take stock, right, of where this team sits right now. We have the Zips projections by Dan Zimborski over at FanGraphs come out last week for the Orioles in 2026. So we got more and more data out there for what this team is going to look like. So let's kind of take a look at the FanGraphs depth chart projections and get a feel for, okay, what are the numbers saying how good this team is going to be at each position in 2026? That's coming up right after this. We'll get to those projections in just a moment. First, got to tell you about the Everydayer Club. I want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first listen of the day. And thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now, you already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Orioles with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 per month or $50 per year. You can be in that Discord channel with me along with other Orioles fans reacting to the news as it happens. You can get the episodes without the ads, and there's a little more to it as well. So go to lockedonorioles.supercast.com, or you can check the link down here in the show notes to learn more about joining the Everydayer Club. So I wanted to take a look at just where the projections sit for the Orioles at this moment. Again, projections are not telling us exactly what is going to happen. It ends up being what the most likely scenario looks like. And if you look at the FanGraphs depth charts projections and where the Orioles stand here, it's, they're in an interesting spot at this moment. Right now, if you counted out, the Orioles are 9th in the FanGraphs team WAR projections right now. So they project them to be essentially the 9th best team in baseball. Goes Dodgers, Blue Jays, Braves, Yankees, Mets, Mariners, Red Sox, Phillies, then Orioles 9th and Astros 10th at the moment. That is kind of the up-to-date standings. If you sort it by batter WAR, the Orioles sit 4th right now. They were 3rd, but the Mets just jumped them after getting Bo Bichette. It's Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, Orioles, Blue Jays is the top 5 in position player WAR. For pitching WAR, that is where the Orioles kind of fall off a little bit. Let's see. They're not giving me good place to count this out. Yeah, the Orioles are 20th right now in pitching WAR. That's not really where you want to be at the moment, which is why they're going to need to add a little bit more to that rotation and probably one more piece in that bullpen. But position by position, it's always interesting to kind of see where they stand among the league right now. So let's start with catcher. The Orioles at FanGraphs right now project to be 5th best at catcher. It goes Mariners, Blue Jays, Yankees, Brewers, and the Orioles. Now, Mariners make sense. They've got Cal Raleigh. Blue Jays make sense. They've got Alejandro Kirk. They're really high on Austin Wells for the Yankees. We'll see. Brewers obviously have William Contreras, but then the Orioles with the Adley Rutschman, Samuel Basallo combination could be the best catching duo in baseball this year, comes in at number 5. Like, Adley still getting projected for a 3.4 WAR. Basallo at about 1 win. I think he's going to end up with more than that with the bat. This is going to be a really good catching group. If Adley can just stay healthy, this is going to be a really good catching group for the Orioles. First base right now, the Orioles are 6th. Why are they 6th? Because they got Pete Alonso. Blue Jays are 1st with Vladdy. A's are 2nd, Nick Kurtz. Phillies 3rd, Bryce Harper. Braves 4th, Matt Olson. Dodgers 5th, Freddie Freeman. All those things make sense. Orioles 6th with Pete Alonso. Obviously, there's a little bit of Mountcastle, Mayo, and Basallo built into this, but it's going to be 600-plus plate appearances, you would think, from Pete Alonso. He's played every day for 2 years. He's going to do it again. That is a huge upgrade for the Orioles because I think there would be a lot of question marks right now if they were going in with just the Mayo-Mountcastle duo, but to go and to spend that money and to get Pete Alonso, it makes your offense look very, very different. Second base is one that actually really intrigued me, right? Jackson Holliday's here. He's getting older. He's slowly getting better, but we still haven't seen the full breakout yet. But Orioles actually rank 5th in second base projections. Diamondbacks are 1st with Ketel Marte. Cubs are 2nd with Nico Horner. Yankees 3rd with Jazz Chisholm. Twins are weirdly 4th. FanGraphs liking Luke Keeschel and Edouard Julien a lot. I'm not sure about that one. But Orioles are 5th with a 2.6 WAR projected for Jackson Holliday. And he'll probably get a little bit from Jordan Westberg and Jeremiah Jackson at that position as well, beating out the Mets with Semien, the Brewers with Terang, the Cardinals with Brendan Donovan. high on Jackson Holiday. Projections around a 251 average, a 403 slugging, a lot of plate appearances. Like, I think we could finally see that full season breakout from Jackson this year. Shortstop, unsurprisingly, the Orioles rank number 2. The only team ahead of them is the Royals with Bobby Witt Jr., but Gunnar Henderson, expected to get a 6+ WAR season, has the Orioles in that number 2 spot, followed by the Mets with Lindor, the Dodgers with Betts, and the Reds with Elly De La Cruz ranking 3, 4, and 5. As long as you have Gunnar Henderson, you're going to be probably a top 3 team in shortstop projections, and that is where the Orioles sit right now. So you're looking back at all this stuff, and you're like, wow, okay, top 5 at second base, top 6 at first base, top 5 at catcher, right? Top 5. They've basically been top 6 in everything. Then you go to third base, and you lose a little bit for the Orioles, but they're still in the top 10. This has them ranked 10th, with Jordan Westburg being the guy, and then projecting a little bit of time for Jeremiah Jackson and Kobe Mayo at that position. The top 10 is Rays with Junior Caminero at 1, Guardians Jose Ramirez, Mets Bo Bichette at 3, Astros Carlos Correa at 4, Cubs with Bregman at 5, Royals Maikel Garcia at 6, Giants Matt Chapman, Padres Manny Machado, Blue Jays Okamoto and Addison Barger, and the Orioles at 10th with Jordan Westburg, just above the Braves with Austin Riley, Twins with Royce Lewis, and the Dodgers with Max Muncy. I think Westburg is going to have a better season than 2.9 WAR, but it's all going to be the question of, can he stay healthy? He really hasn't done that for a full season since debuting in 2023. If he's going to stay healthy, the Orioles are going to be better than 10th. But even that, all around the infield, they are projected top 10 at every single position. Let's go to left field, where, again, the Orioles are in the top 10. Taylor Ward has them ranked 8th in the projections. Most of the ABs going to Ward, and there's a little bit of like Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Beavers, Colton Cowser, left field at bats kind of sprinkled in as well. But Ward looking for another strong season after the Orioles traded for him coming from the Angels. They've got the Rangers number 1 with kind of the Wyatt Langford, Brandon Nimmo combination. Tigers at 2 with Riley Green. Guardians 3 with Stephen Kwan. Then the Astros with the Jesus Sanchez, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Zach Cole. What in the world are they going to do type of thing are 4th. I'm not sure I buy that one. Then Red Sox, Roman Anthony, A's, Tyler Soderstrom. We got a big extension. Nats with the Dalen Lyle, James Wood combo, and then the Orioles 8th with Taylor Ward. I think Ward can bring them a little bit higher on that list. But again, you have another top 10 pairing out there among position players. Center field is probably the one place where the Orioles maybe feel like they could get a good amount better. And that is where they ranked 13th. It is the only position so far where they are not ranked in the top 10. They, again, have most of those center field ABs going to Colton Cowser, with essentially a little bit of Leody Taveras sprinkled in there, who got the 1-year deal to kind of be the backup center fielder. And, the projections are for like a 230 average, a 2 WAR season for Colton Cowser. The big question is, how good defensively is he going to be in center if he plays there for a full season? It's something he's sprinkled in the last 2 years defensively and looked pretty good there late in the year. But this is the first time he's on the team without Cedric Mullins being here, and that center field, at least at this point, is really Colton's position. You look around the Orioles, Brewers at 14th with Blake Perkins, Marlins 12th with Jacob Marcy, Pirates 11th with O'Neill Cruz. That's a question for the O's right now, I think. Do they want to upgrade there? Do they want to get better defensively? Is someone like Brenton Doyle or Luis Robert or Harrison Bader, are these guys still on their radar? Or are they going to stick with Colton Cowser? I tend to think they're going to stick with Colton Cowser out there. And if it is really bad, it's something they can upgrade, closer to the deadline, or maybe Enrique Bradfield is really looking good at AAA and he can be a part of this team later in the season. But that's what I think is one of the bigger questions right now. And then you go to right field, and it's fairly similar. The Orioles are projected at 13th as well in right field. They've got the chunk of the plate appearances kind of being split almost evenly between Dylan Beavers and Tyler O'Neill, and there's like a little bit of Jeremiah Jackson time in there as well. And I think that's fair to have a split between Beavers and O'Neill, especially when you got to expect O'Neill's going to spend a chunk of time on the injured list in 2026, hopefully not nearly as much as he did in 2025, but that's been the scope of his career with all the injuries. And it is to be expected, right? You have Dylan Beavers, a pretty unproven player who's only been in the big leagues for 6 weeks. And then you have O'Neill, who's much more proven, but is going to have injury issues that'll just keep him off the field. I think the Orioles are banking on that platoon being better, but it is kind of interesting when you have, center field and right field both coming in 13 in the projections, that maybe if the O's added another outfielder, it's something where they'd still have some space to get a little better. And then you look at DH. DH is always so weird to project where a team is going to end up. The Orioles are projected 16th right now. It's mostly because they don't have a dedicated DH. Depth charts kind of gives out the ABs to Basayo, O'Neill, Rutschman, Alonso, Mountcastle, Westberg kind of all getting a little chunk of the DH, which puts them down at just 1.5 WAR from that position. It's probably the one you want to look at the least because unless you are a team with Shohei Ohtani or Kyle Schwarber or Yordan Alvarez, where you have a guy who is going to take basically all of your DH ABs. Most teams at this point in Major League Baseball use DH as a spot to give guys kind of a half day off while still keeping them in the lineup. So it's really hard to project there. And again, Basayo only 6 weeks in the big leagues, projects as the main DH. The projections are going to be lower for younger, unestablished players. Starting rotation, we've talked about plenty so far this offseason. They are still projected to be 18th. Rogers, Boz, Bradish, Kramer, and Eflin at the moment. That is why I think they do need to make one more addition, but we've talked about that ad nauseum. And then you go to the bullpen, where the Orioles are projected 16th. And now Zips has them a little bit higher, but the depth chart has 16th. I think where they're projecting right now is to be a Helsley, Kittredge, Aiken, Stroud, Selby, Enns, Garcia, Cano is the bullpen projection. I think that'll change a little bit when it becomes more realistic that Tyler Wells will definitely be in the bullpen taking the spot of a Colin Selby, and that makes it a little bit better on the projection side. But they could absolutely, I think, use another relief arm as well. But I think always good to just check in on where the O's sit in the projections here, just a little over 2 months away from opening day. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. If you're an audio listener, subscribe, follow the show, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a 5-star rating and a review. That really helps us out. And if you have Orioles questions, want to talk some ball, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. I will be back on Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit about Colton Cowser. We just kind of previewed that a little bit, like what can you expect from him in center field? We will do his season review from 25 and look ahead to 2026. And of course, if there's any Orioles breaking news between now and then, we will get to that as well. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.